this week's show. And I'm feeling a lot better than I was on New Year's Eve, and decided to get back to being my happily hopeless self. So here it is, 2022, and the world is still spinning round, amazingly enough. We're still here, hanging on by our fingernails, but we are still here. This is the last Vegemadic show that I will be using my present camera on. I'm excited that I bought finally replacing the 10-year-old 1080 HD camera with a brand new 4K. So I'm going to be uploading in 4K as long as I can figure out also this new software, the Pinnacle Studio 25. And I was using old editing software. I will for this because I'm still going through brain meltdown trying to figure out how everything works on the Pinnacle Studio 25. I'm using an old copy of Sony Vegas, and Sony no longer makes video editing software. They sold it. They sold it to Magix, who is I had dealings with years ago and was not impressed with. So I decided to make the switch to Pinnacle. So it does all these cool things that at least it does in the videos that they show you when they're trying to sell you this stuff. But I figured new camera, new software, new look for Vegemadic in 2022. I'd also like to talk about small channels a little bit. And some people work really hard and their view count is practically non-existent. And this deviates from the whole idea of YouTube from the way it used to be anyway. Everything turns to shit eventually, doesn't it? But I came across this channel, and sometimes you're lucky and you find a few channels that are maybe a bit experimental or certainly an interesting point of view. And there's a fellow on here called T.Bone, and he does a show called the T.Bone Side of Life. Now, I don't know if that's medium or rare or well done, but it's the T.Bone Side of Life. Being a vegetarian, I'm kind of opposed to that name, but we won't go there in spite of it. Anyway, I'm rambling on. So I'm going to show you a couple of little clips from his films, and hopefully you can go over there and give the guy a boost. And we need to help other small channels out. I've always vowed that if I ever made it way up there above 1,000 subscribers, and even now, that I would be happy to show some smaller channels that I think are worthwhile. And the algorithm now prevents you from seeing anything that's new or, you know, homemade stuff, basically, because it's basically becoming this just giant television set. And there's a few exceptions. Anyway, people don't want to hear me ranting about YouTube anymore, so I will no longer rant about YouTube in the new year.
So this prophesied collapse of American democracy is karma, plain and simple.
And of course, this week we all are celebrating the January 6th, whatever it was, at the Capitol building in America. And what a huge shit show that's turning out to be. And seeing people that are completely deluded about this stuff and making excuses and whataboutisms and just going on and on, that you cannot reason. It's mind-boggling. It's like this brick wall has shut up, and no, I will not look, I will not see, I will not think, use my God-given brain. this is shocking to me to see the amount of the okay, maybe it's because, like, in the film Idiocracy, only stupid people are breeding. That must be it, because you look around and you go, okay, it's like George Carlin said, right? I mean, look at the intelligence of the average American person and realize that half are even dumber. So I'll include Canadians along with that. I'm not being, I'm not being a nationalist for Canada or anything. We've got our own issues here, although we have moved in a far more progressive direction and a little quicker pace. But knowing Canadians, sooner or later they're going to vote in the Conservative Party and the whole shit show will start all over again. And neoliberalism. It's time to get back to Keynesian economics, get rid of this whole free trade crap. It's not working. Localized economies. How many times can I go on about this? Now, if we talk about the non-competitive nature of capitalism these days, you're looking at media conglomerates that are no longer news, but infotainment. You look at small, independent voices, creative people like my friend Cindy over at The Revolution Continues. Now, these platforms, these very intelligent, well thought out opinions are buried not only from the mainstream, but I mean, you really have to know somebody to somehow meet to know that these things exist, because they're pushed so far down by the big tech companies who want to support, surprise, surprise, big corporatocracy. You know, it's really funny that I got into an argument on Twitter once. I should know better. It's a complete waste of time to argue with people on Twitter, especially about politics. And this dude just did not. He was a Clinton bot, a Hill bot, and I mentioned that I thought the Democratic Party weren't particularly fair to Bernie Sanders in 2016. To which I was answered with a level of vitriol that would make the most ardent Herr Drumpf supporter embarrassed. And then he said, I checked your channel on YouTube. It's tiny. So you're irrelevant. Your opinion doesn't matter because you're tiny and you've got a tiny audience. And you're a liar and all this, like, and it was just intended to be a normal conversation, disagreement or whatever, and pointing out certain things. But I never got a chance to explain myself because the dude had blocked me, but I went and checked his profile page. He's got pictures of Hillary everywhere, and I assumed that it was somebody in her orbit, because I don't know, politicians, they pretend to know what they're doing. None of them do. They're all human, and some of them are psychotic, and some of them are narcissistic. Usually a combination of the both, or the same people you find in corporate boardrooms. People that generally suffer from a superiority complex that buries some deep-seated toilet training issue or something like that. I think I read that in a book once. Anyway, I'm going off again. Where was I? Oh yes, amnesia haze. Yeah, well, that's my latest indulgence. It's called amnesia haze. I never heard of it before, but it makes me forget. Makes me forget real good. I don't know that or the advancing decrepitude of this body that falls apart and dust to dust and ashes to ashes, and then you just exploded all over the universe. And oh God, it's deep, I tell you. You know, I hear about all these labor disruptions and people going on strike and demanding more, which is long overdue. But by the same token, if you actually look at what these enormously wealthy corporations are doing, they're settling, okay, say you get a 5% raise. Well, it's actually a 1% pay cut if inflation's running at 6%. And they don't think most people are smart enough to figure it out. And most of this, I think most of the supply chain stuff is bullshit, to be quite honest. And I think it's an excuse to raise prices. There, I said it. I'll say it again. I don't notice any shortage of any goods in any store that I go into. I do notice a shortage of civility among people, but that's just seems to be a late capitalism state of mind that everybody's in. Everybody's angry. And anger isn't a productive emotion, it's destructive. It can be expressed in reasonable ways without resorting to demonizing the other side. Although, come to think of it, some of those people, I think, might be demons. You see, this is the game that they play. They separate people into every manageable group, and they can put people against people for the silliest of reasons, for the inconsequential things, and start wars between these factions, because then nobody notices that the big guys on top are vacuuming up the money. What's happened here in Canada, the real estate has gone completely through the roof and insane. I live in a tiny little place in a working class neighborhood that we bought in 2000. The year 2000, we actually managed to scrape together a down payment and put it down on this rundown little place that needed a ton of work, but I was a handyman. I was convinced that it was a good deal. So many years of heartbreak and hard work and backbreaking labor. The place is probably worth about, I would say, at least 10 times what we paid for it, which doesn't matter anyway, because the rents are outrageous and the cost of buying homes in this area is skyrocketed. The average home in Canada is something like $750,000. That's insanity. And you look at young people today and they're going to be burdened with this huge debt load. How can anybody, okay, the lucky ones inherit their houses, but for anybody living on the margins, I mean, you're going to be at the mercy of landlords, because these huge rental companies are buying up houses at a ridiculous rate. They want to just have more control over people's lives, and individual houses that the working class could afford if they, worked hard and played by the rules. I always did that. Now, it's impossible. You have to be a millionaire. How many people are millionaires? I don't know any. I have here a roll of Canadian pennies. Now, these have not been used. They haven't been circulated in a lot of years. They got rid of them years ago, decades maybe. Probably decades ago. And I saved a roll of pennies just because of the nostalgia value. So you think of inflation, and this roll of 50 pennies when I was a kid would have bought you a comic book, an ice cream cone, maybe a little plastic toy or something. It would have bought you a lot of shit. It's time to check the oddities in the news from AP Oddities. And this week, just in, from Nashville, Tennessee, a top Tennessee House Republican lawmaker has apologized for losing his temper and being ejected from watching a high school basketball game after a confrontation with the referee. The dust-up included what appeared to be either a feigned or failed attempt at pulling down the official's pants, according to the video footage. I was wanting him to fight with me, totally lost my junk, and got booted from the gym, Faison wrote. I've never lost my temper, but I did tonight, and it was completely stupid of me. My God, a Republican admitting he was stupid. It's a miracle. Emotions getting in the way of rational thoughts are never good. Hear that, Trumpers? Emotions getting in the way of rational thoughts are never good. This is from a fellow GQP guy, whatever, from Tennessee, Daniel Boone country. Emotions. Providence Academy, a private religious school in Johnson City, live streamed the boys' game Tuesday against Lakeway Christian Academy, a private religious school in White Pine. Faison's son is on the Lakeway team, so okay. And the video feed shows Faison sitting in the stands before players hit the ground on a loose ball in the third quarter, spurring the referee's whistle and a brief scuffle between the two teams. And you know, when those private Christian school teams get going against each other, the knives come out. Since 2019, Faison, it sounds just such a classy name for a guy from Tennessee, Faison. Since 2019, Faison has been the House Caucus Chairman for Republicans, who have super majorities in both legislative chambers. In Tennessee, isn't that a surprise? It's one of those states, isn't it? South of the Mason-Dixon line, the South is gonna rise again. In his apology, the lawmaker from Cosby wrote that for years he thought it was wrong for parents to lose their temper at sporting events, saying, "It's not Christian, and it's not mature, and it's embarrassing to the child." Now, if only more Republicans could take this man's advice, but then he loses it. Pantsing a ref on the gym floor is next-level bullying, and not even the stuff middle school locker rooms, Representative Gloria Johnson, a Knoxville Democrat, tweeted on Wednesday. So there you go. If you get near Republicans, make sure you got a good belt on and tight. Republicans. That takes a special breed. I think I've read about that stuff somewhere. Okay, well, I'm sure you're getting tired of me nattering on, so what I'm going to do is close down the studio for a week, rearrange things, and come back with my brand new camera and broadcasting in fabulous 4K, but I think you need 4K TV to look at it properly. I don't know how these things work, but it's 4K, so I thought the K stood for cool, so I thought, yeah, I need to go 4K, so the channel will be going 4K, and it will probably take me 6 hours to upload a video because of that, but hey, quality is my middle name. Actually, it's Veg E Matic. E, my middle name. I don't want to tell you what E stands for. It's highly traumatizing. Goodbye, everybody. Stay well. Watch out for each other. Help each other where you can. And try not to get angry, because angry just makes you want to pull people's pants down, and that's never good. It's an ugly look. It just won't work out. So until then, this is Veg E Matic, Mr. Veg E Matic. I'm slowly morphing the channel to change it to Veg E Matic, because I thought maybe then people wouldn't keep getting the damn food processor videos. See you next week.